In this video lesson, I will take you through the Scrum framework as defined in the Scrum Guide 2020 version. Scrum is a simple framework defined by Ken Scaber and Jeff Sutherland. And over the years, it has gone through multiple revisions. And the Scrum Guide 2020, which was released in November 2020, is the latest version. So I'm not adding anything, nor I am deleting anything. This explanation given in the video is as per the Scrum Guide 2020. Thank you. Let me take you through the Scrum framework as defined in the Scrum Guide 2020. I request active watching of this video so that you understand the concepts very clearly. The topics we'll be covering in this video are the Scrum definition, Scrum theory, Scrum values, Scrum team, the Scrum events, and the Scrum artifacts. Scrum definition. It is a very lightweight framework. The Scrum Guide itself is 13 pages. That is an indication of the lightness of this framework. It helps people and teams and organizations to generate value, adaptive solutions to complex problems, purposefully incomplete. When we say purposefully incomplete, Scrum is just a wrapper and it can accommodate any best practice. For example, earned value management is a best practice in the predictive project management. If the team feels that earned value management can add value to a particular Scrum project, they can adopt it. Absolutely no problem. So Scrum is just a wrapper which can wrap around all the processes which can add value to the product of the project. So they've kept it as purposefully incomplete. It is not highly prescriptive. The adaptive solutions to complex problems helps people and teams and organizations to generate value, and it is a lightweight framework. Scrum theory founded on empiricism and lean thinking. The knowledge comes from experience. Making decisions based on what is observed is more critical. Lean thinking reduces waste and focuses on the essentials. So generally there is a notion about Agile is that Agile is ad hoc. It is indisciplined. But when we really get into Scrum, which is one of the most popular framework in the Agile frameworks, among the Agile frameworks, everything we talk with numbers. How much was planned, how much is completed, everything is based on numbers. So it is highly driven by empiricism. And making decisions based on what is observed. That means every sprint, at the end of every sprint, there is a sprint review. Lessons learned is there. And we plan the subsequent sprint based on the learnings from the previous sprint. And whatever that can add value to a sprint, we incorporate, and whatever is not adding value, we are constantly in the drive to eliminate them. It is an iterative incremental approach, improves predictability of the project and reduces risk. Improves predictability means it is because of the transparency it creates. It increases predictability, and it reduces risk because it is an iterative model, the stakeholders get to see the increment of the product very frequently, and that reduces a lot of risk. The empirical Scrum pillars are transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Transparency is key. At periodic intervals, maybe there is a daily stand-up meeting or a daily Scrum, that is a form of inspection. There is a sprint review, that is a form of inspection. Then adaptation. Based on the lessons learned during a sprint, we adapt the subsequent sprints. Then comes the Scrum values. The Scrum members must be committed, highly focused, should be open, should respect. When I say respect, it should be self-respect and mutual respect, and the courage. The Scrum team members are encouraged to take some calculated risk. So these are the Scrum values. And sometimes when I share this in a group of people, sometimes they get very cynical. But then if you really want to appreciate it, you take the opposite of it. Can we deliver something with uncommitted people? No. Can we deliver something with a team which doesn't have a focus? No. Can we deliver something with a team which is not open enough to share the status and issues? No. Can we work in a dysfunctional team where there is no absolute mutual respect? No. Can we work in a fearful atmosphere where nobody has any courage to communicate openly? No, we cannot deliver. So these things, before judging it as utopian stuff, I want to say that without these things, a project cannot be successful. Let us move on. Then Scrum team. Scrum team is a small group of people, less than 10 numbers. And this 10 includes the Scrum Master, who is a kind of a project manager, but maybe a servant leader, Scrum Master, product owner, developers, and the team will be cross-functional and self-managing. The Scrum Master ensures that the project is following Scrum. The product owner maintains the product backlog. He maintains the feature list of the product and prioritizes them. And developers build the product, and the team can be cross-functional. When we say cross-functional, in the conventional team we have developers, we have testers, we have architects, whereas in Scrum team it is just one team which has multiple skill sets. There can be people who knows testing, there can be people who understands coding or engineering or architect. So it is a cross-functional team, but there is only one designation, that is you are a team member within a Scrum team. So it is a cross-functional team, because we don't create departments within the team, we don't create sub-teams within the team, because the team size itself is only 10, so it is just one team. And self-managing means it is a self-organizing team. The team decides how to do the work. Nobody is going to tell them how to do it. The team themselves decide how to do their work. And the Scrum team is responsible for all product related activities. They are responsible for stakeholder collaboration, verification of the work done, maintenance of the work done, and operations and experimentation and any other. And the Scrum team has a collective responsibility. If a particular iteration fails, the responsibility is on to the full team. And if a particular iteration is successful also, it is the team takes the credit. Then the specific roles. Developers within a Scrum team, they create a plan for the sprint backlog. They're responsible for instilling quality by adhering to a definition of done. This is very, very important. Definition of done is nothing but the acceptance criteria. So before you start working on something, the acceptance criteria must be defined and understood by all the stakeholders. That is a key criteria to be successful in a Scrum team. That is known as definition of done. There should be absolute clarity on the definition of done for every work we are doing. Adapting their plan each day toward a sprint goal. For every sprint there is a goal to be achieved. So they keep adapting their plan each day based on the progress made, based on the deviation, based on the lessons they learned. They keep on fine-tuning the plan to accomplish the sprint goal. They hold each other accountable as professionals. They're responsible for creating a plan for the sprint. We call it a sprint backlog. Instilling quality by adhering to definition of done, adapting their plan each day toward a sprint goal, and holding each other accountable as professionals. So we discussed about the team as such, then we discussed about the development team. Now it's a product owner. Product owner is responsible for maximizing the value of the product. Effective product backlog management is another key responsibility of the product owner. That is developing and communicating the product goal explicitly, creating and clearly communicating the product backlog items, ordering the product backlog items, and ensuring that the product backlog is transparent, visible, and understood. Product owner is one person and not a committee. The entire organization must support him. He may delegate some of his responsibility and at the same time he is responsible for it. So product owner maintains the product backlog. When I say product backlog contains the potential features that may or may not get into the product. As and when a product owner gets an idea about a new feature that can be good for the product, he enters it into the product backlog, not in a detailed fashion, maybe as one-liner. So that gets into the product backlog, and the product backlog keeps growing. When the product backlog stops growing, there is an indication that the product has reached end of life. So typically they use something like an Excel sheet, keep on entering the probable features that may get into the product, and then they prioritize it, which features should happen first. They think about a minimum viable product as well. So which are the top priority features, in which iteration it should go, and for the immediate iterations, before starting the iterations or sprint. In the Scrum, the terminology for iteration is sprint. So before starting the sprint, they would have elaborated this product backlog into fully blown details. In the Agile world, they call it as user stories, but then there is no mentioning of user stories in the Scrum guide. You can use whatever you want. It can be user stories, it could be use case diagrams, it could be drawings, it could be data flow diagrams. It is up to the team to decide. That's why the Scrum is not completely defined. Consciously they have kept it open so the team can decide. So there is a product backlog. The backlog items has to be prioritized. It must be elaborated before taking up for production. So how to elaborate it, the team can decide. So these are the key responsibilities of the product owner. Then the Scrum Master, yes, the main role of the Scrum Master is to create that Scrum environment, because always the product may, when you implement Scrum new, there is always a tendency to get it derailed. So we'll start with Scrum, and after some time it will not be Scrum, it will become something else. But then it is the Scrum Master's responsibility to ensure that the project is following Scrum, and for that he has to create the right environment. The environment we are seeking here is the product owner orders the work for solving a complex problem into a product backlog. So the product owner creates a product backlog. The Scrum team develops an increment of the product during the sprint. So here we have the sprint. So the Scrum develops an increment of the product backlog during the sprint. The Scrum team and its stakeholders inspects the results and adjusts for the next sprint. So at the end of the sprint there is a sprint review. So they inspect the results, and after that they get into sprint retrospective, and those findings gets incorporated into the subsequent sprint. The Scrum team and its stakeholders inspects, and the cycle keeps on repeating till we complete all the items in the product backlog. Scrum Master is accountable for establishing Scrum as defined in the Scrum Guide. The Scrum Master must train others Scrum theory and practice, and Scrum Masters are true leaders who serve the team and the organization. So as a Scrum Master, I should be serving the team, I should be serving the product owner, and I should be serving the organization for the success of the product and for the correct implementation of Scrum. Scrum Master service to the team, coaching the team in self-management and cross-functionality. So this cross-functional team has to unite and work as a single unit to deliver value. So for that, coaching is required. Helping the Scrum team focus on the iteration or sprint. Causing the removal of impediments, ensuring that the Scrum events take place and are positive, productive, and kept within the time box. So causing the removal of impediments is one key aspect of Scrum Master role. As and when the team comes across an issue which is preventing them to proceed further, the Scrum Master has to facilitate a solution to that. It can be dependencies, it can be scope creep, it can be lack of clarity on the requirements, it can be lack of equipment. Whatever may be the issue which the team is unable to resolve, the Scrum Master has to get it resolved. So that is the causing the removal of impediments. And ensuring that Scrum events take place and are positive, productive, and kept within the time box. This time boxing is very critical in Scrum. Of the three pillars of project management, time, cost, and scope, in Scrum what is non-negotiable is the time. Time cannot be negotiated. If we say a planning meeting is 4 hours meeting, it should get over in 4 hours time. If you say a daily Scrum or the daily stand-up meeting is for 15 minutes, it should get over in 15 minutes time. If the sprint is planned for 30 days, it must get over in 30 days time. Maybe you would not have completed the scope planned, but still on the 30th day, it is a hard stop for the sprint. So these things must be ensured by the Scrum Master. And continuous coaching to the team, orientation to the senior management, part of role of a Scrum Master. So the Scrum Master who doesn't have conviction on Scrum, that is a big risk to the project. Then Scrum Master service to the product owner. Find techniques for effective product goal definition. Find techniques for effective product backlog management. helping the team understand the need for clear and concise product backlog definitions, helping to establish empirical product planning, and facilitating stakeholder collaboration. Very often, the product owners can be non-technical. They are good in their functional knowledge, can be excellent, but when it comes to technology and tools, they need not be very strong. In those scenarios, the Scrum Master should work along with the product owner to make things happen, to prioritize features, to sequence them. There is a major role. There is a great synergy between Scrum Master and the product owner. Then Scrum Master service to the organization. Find techniques for effective product goal definition, and find techniques for effective product backlog management, and helping the team understand the need for clear and concise product backlog definitions, helping to establish empirical product planning, and facilitating stakeholder collaboration. Find techniques for effective product goal planning. It's about defining the objectives and the goals for the product very, very clearly. It can be the business case of the product itself. Find techniques for effective product backlog management. So we discussed about product backlog. Sometimes we may have to use tools for it. So picking up the right tool, training people on the tool, all these things are facilitated by the Scrum Master. Helping the team understand the need for clear and concise product backlog definitions. Sometimes during the planning meetings, the team agree to things which are not clear enough. So in those situations, it is the responsibility of the Scrum Master to educate the team about the importance of these things. Without absolute clarity on the requirements, the team should not agree to develop it, or without clarity, the team should not develop it. So that is very important. And as a Scrum Master, you will have to give the confidence, you have to mentor the team on these things. And helping to establish empirical product planning. Now let us say your product backlog has 100 features to be developed. Now we have to do a kind of estimate for this, so that we can decide on how many sprints, and each sprint how much work we should complete, and what is the manpower required. So there should be some amount of empiricism, the numbers getting into all these things. So it is the Scrum Master's responsibility to the organization to establish these things, because we need to bring in estimation techniques, story points and stuff like that, or anything, because again, Scrum Guide is not proposing any one particular technique. So that we have to, it is giving freedom for the Scrum team to decide the techniques and the tools they can use. Then, so we discussed about the roles of the product owner, we discussed about the roles of the development team, and we discussed about the roles of the Scrum Master. We discussed the roles of the Scrum Master to the development team, to the organization, and to the product owner. Now let us get into the Scrum events. The main event is the sprint. So sprint is considered as the heartbeat of Scrum. Within the sprint, ideas are turned into value. Fixed duration event, less than 30 days. So a sprint cannot be more than 30 days duration. I've seen sprints of weekly sprints, I've seen fortnightly sprints, and I've seen this 30-day sprints as well. But as per the Scrum Guide, a sprint cannot be more than 30 days. That is mandated. Then again, we cannot keep on changing the sprints duration every now and then. When I say that, you cannot run one sprint of 30 days, another sprint of 15 days, then another sprint of 30 days. That is not allowed, because if you do that, then we will not learn much from these sprints. So if you're running with 15-day sprints, you run with it. Maybe after 6 or 7 sprints, if you want to revise it to 30-day sprints, that is fine. But intermittently, don't change it. And the key here is maximum 30 days duration, which includes the sprint planning, sprint review, sprint retrospective. A new sprint starts immediately after the completion of a sprint. As soon as one sprint gets over, the next sprint starts. Focus is on the sprint goal. So every sprint can have a sprint goal. And the quality does not decrease. In every sprint, we have to ensure that the definition of done is accomplished. And the refinement of definition of done also happens sprint after sprints. The product backlog is refined as needed during the sprint planning meeting and during the execution of the sprints. It's a continuous activity. The refinement of the product backlog is a continuous activity throughout the project. Scope may be clarified and renegotiated with the product owner. That means when we plan a sprint, the product owner proposes saying that these are the features that must be taken up during the sprint. And if the scope is not clear enough to estimate that particular work, the team members are supposed to ask questions and get the scope clarified. Each sprint can be treated as a short project of maximum 30 days duration. To monitor the progress of the sprints, the teams may use burn downs, burn ups, cumulative flow charts. Again, it is not mandated by the Scrum Guide. Some people use earn value for Agile for Scrum. That is okay. So it is up to the team. They will decide which are all the tools and techniques they will use to report progress. But then these are the commonly used ones. Burn down chart is predominantly it is used. Very frequently it is used at a sprint level, at a release level, and at the product level also. And burn up charts are also used. Cumulative flow charts are also used widely in Scrum teams. So each sprint comprises of you have a product backlog. The product owner proposes a set of features to be developed, and the team gets into the sprint planning meeting. All the clarifications of the requirements happens. They estimate the work, then they commit on a refined set of features and that they develop during the sprint. And every day they have a daily stand-up meeting, which is also known as a daily scrum, which is for 15 minutes. And at the end of the sprint, there is a sprint review by the key stakeholders of the project. If the sprint items are meeting the definition of done, the sprint is successful. Then they get into a sprint retrospective. They discuss things like what all things we did right and what all things we did wrong, and what are the immediate action required. So they incorporate those things into the subsequent sprint. And at the end of a sprint, the product increment gets delivered. Then the first event, that is the sprint planning meeting. It lays out the work to be performed in the sprint. So during the sprint planning meeting, the product owner proposes a set of features that he wants to be developed during the sprint. The team clarifies it, asks their questions, bring in clarity. So it is a collaborative planning by the team, and they ask questions like why this sprint is valuable, what is the value this sprint must be delivering. So we come out with a sprint goal. So no point in doing lot of discrete things. No point in developing lot of features halfway through. So every sprint, if it can deliver a concrete value, then it is better. So we have to define the goal of the sprint so that all the features that is taken up within the sprint, cumulatively it will deliver that value. For example, within a sprint, now if I'm saying let us do all the features pertaining to user management, so at the end of it I deliver that user management feature, then the customer gets value out of it. He can start using the user management module. So always we define the sprint goal in such a way that it delivers value to the customer. Then during the sprint planning meeting, the goal is defined, then what can be done during the sprint, that is also discussed and finalized. How will the chosen work get done during the sprint? The team decides it, and decompose the product backlog into smaller pieces of work that can be completed in 1 to 2 days. So that means during the planning meeting, first half that gets into deciding what all features that can be done during the sprint, and the second half of the planning meeting the team decomposes those features into activities that can be completed in 1 day's time. Each task, it should not run for more than 1 day. In exceptional cases maybe 2 days, not more than that, but always we should strive for that 1 day. A task should get over in a day's time. That is the thumb rule prescribed by Scrum Guide. So that your burn down chart, the sprint burn down chart, will see some movement. Some tasks will get over, some tasks will get carried forward. So if you have a task which runs for 10 days, then the burn down chart will not show a deviation for 10 days. So the whole sprint itself is for 30 days. So here we need smaller tasks to monitor and control it effectively. The output of the sprint planning meeting is the sprint goal, the product backlog items selected for the sprint, plan for delivering them together, all these things together form the sprint backlog. So typically for a 30-day sprint, a 8-hour sprint planning meeting is recommended. And if the duration of the sprint is lower than 30 days, sometimes we will be able to complete a sprint planning meeting faster as well. But then based on my experience, so far I've never seen a sprint planning meeting getting over in less than 4 hours time. Even if the sprint duration is 1 week, still it is going to take 4 hours time minimum. But what is recommended is even for a 30-day sprint, the sprint planning meeting should get over in 8 hours time. Then the daily scrum. Daily scrum is also known as the daily stand-up meeting. It is to inspect the progress to the sprint goal. So every day we track the progress towards the sprint goal. Very often we use the burn down chart to do it. It's a 15-minute meeting for the developers. So it is a developers meeting held at the same time and place. That makes the scheduling easier. The product owner and the scrum master can participate as developers if they are working on some items. So a Scrum Master can volunteer some of the development activities. In that case, he'll be attending that meeting. Similarly, product owner also, if he has volunteered for some work within the sprint, he can participate in the capacity of developers, not wearing the hat of a product owner and Scrum Master, because this is the meeting of the development team. This is the developers meeting. So this happens on a daily basis. Then comes the sprint review. So towards the fag end of the sprint reviews happens to inspect the outcome of the sprint, to determine the future adaptations. The Scrum team presents the results to stakeholders. The Scrum team and stakeholders review the outcome of the sprint and collaborate on what to do next. And it's 4 hours for 1 month sprint. So sprint review meetings are 4-hour meeting where the increment of the product developed during the sprint is demonstrated to the key stakeholders, and somebody verifies whether this developed increment of the product during the sprint, it satisfies the definition of done for that, and if all the activities planned or all the features planned within the sprint satisfies their definition of done, then we say the sprint is successful. And we collaborate on what to do next, some discussion on what can we do next. That also happens in the sprint review meeting. But again, it is not the detailed sprint planning meeting. That should happen only in the next sprint. So it will take approximately 4 hours for a 1 month sprint. If the duration of the sprint is lower, then the sprint review meeting duration also can be lower. Then comes the sprint retrospective. To plan ways to increase quality and effectiveness, inspects how the last sprint went with respect to individuals, interactions, processes, tools, and the definition of done. What went well and why, and what went wrong and why, and how the problems were and were not solved. So 3-hour meeting for 30 days sprint identifies the most helpful changes to improve effectiveness. The most impactful improvements are addressed as soon as possible. So retrospective is a kind of lessons learned meeting which happens at the end of every sprint. It runs for 3 hours for 30 days sprint, and the team discusses about what all things we did right, what all things could have been done better, and what all things we should be doing immediately in the subsequent sprints. So these things are discussed in detail so that the corrective actions can be implemented in the subsequent sprint. Very often we say that success and failure of a sprint doesn't matter as long as we learn from a sprint and incorporate the corrective actions in the subsequent sprint. If that doesn't happen, then what will happen is sprint after sprint you will fail. So that will be very dangerous for the sprint. So the sprint retrospectives and the incorporation of the lessons learned in the subsequent sprint is very, very important for the successful delivery of the product on time. So far now we discussed about the Scrum team. Then we discussed about the different roles in the Scrum team, like the product owner, the development team, and the Scrum Master. And we discussed about the sprint, and we discussed about the ceremonies like the sprint planning meeting, sprint review meeting, the daily Scrum or the daily stand-up meeting, and the sprint retrospective meeting. Now let us discuss about the Scrum artifacts. Product backlog is one key artifact, and that is driven by the product goal. What should the product do at the completion of it? So based on that goal, the product backlog should get fine-tuned and ordered and refined. Then sprint backlog. Sprint backlog is driven by the sprint goal. At the end of the sprint, what is that we should be achieving? Then sprint increment. It is about the work we are completing within the sprint. That means that particular work or the development work that happens within the sprint, or the increment of the product that is happening within the sprint, is driven by the definition of done. That is the goal. So this must meet the definition of goal. So product level goals, the product backlog entries are aligned to the product level goals. Sprint backlog entries are aligned to the sprint goal, and the work performed within the sprint are aligned to the definition of done. So we discussed about the Scrum environment. We discussed about the contents of the Scrum guide. We discussed about the different roles within the Scrum: product owner, Scrum Master, and the development team. We discussed about the cross-functional teams. Then we discussed about the ceremonies within the sprint, like the sprint planning meeting, sprinting, sprint review, sprint retrospectives, and the daily stand-up or the daily Scrum. Then we discussed about the artifacts within Scrum. That is the product backlog, sprint backlog, and the increment. Then we said the product backlogs are driven by the product goals, sprint backlogs are driven by the sprint goals, and the artifact and the product increment is driven by the definition of done. So this is a Scrum summary. So the product owner comes out with it keeps on developing the product backlog, focusing on the product's goal, and he prioritizes them, and he proposes a set of backlog items to be developed within a sprint to a sprint planning meeting, which is attended by the product owner, Scrum Master, and the development team. So during the sprint planning meeting, he proposes a set of features to be developed. The team clarifies everything, estimates it, decomposes it into tasks, and they decide they decide how to convert that into the final deliverable. And every day there is a daily stand-up meeting where the team members discusses three things, like what did I do yesterday, what am I doing today, and what are the challenges I'm facing. This meeting cannot be more than 15 minutes. And then at the end of the sprint there is a sprint review, which runs for 4 hours for a 30-day sprint. Then we get into a sprint retrospective as well. We discussed about what all things we did right and what all things we did wrong. So this runs for approximately 3 hours time for a 30-day sprint. If the sprint duration is lesser than 30 days, then the duration of the ceremonies can be reduced. Again, it is a team's decision. At the end of it, a product increment comes out of the sprint, and they get into the subsequent sprint planning meeting, and this sprinting or these iterations continues till the complete product backlog is exhausted. And initially we focus on a minimum viable product. Our prioritization will be to come out with a minimum viable product, and once we achieve that minimum viable product, then it is all about enhancements to the product. So that is the Scrum summary. Now you have spent considerable time watching this video. Now you can get a certificate for spending this much time watching this video if you desire so. So you can earn the certificate of completion by completing the assessment. It's a small assessment, so if you have watched this video carefully or seriously, you'll be able to answer those questions there. And once you complete it, we'll be sending you a certificate of completion for it'll amount to 1 PDU. So if you want to report a PDU somewhere, you can do this, convert this into a 1-hour course and earn your PDUs just by completing the assessment. And it will be great if you can share this video with your friends and colleagues who will benefit from this video. Now, if you really look at the whole project management spectrum is converging. Both the predictive project management and the agile project management is getting converged, and it is getting into something called as hybrid project management, which is driven by the Project Management Institute. So irrespective of whether that person is working in IT projects or non-IT projects, Scrum is going to help them, because Scrum is not that domain dependent. Even within a construction project, all the phases prior to the actual construction, Scrum can be implemented. And this video is maybe the first step towards mastering the Agile framework, because Agile is an ocean. So you can learn a lot of things and be jack of everything and master of none. Instead of that, my recommendation is master Scrum first. That is a good gateway into the Agile world, and then explore further maybe what all best practices are available, and so that we can accommodate all those things and wrap it up within the Scrum framework. That can be a good approach to master Agile, because you'll be very sure about the usage and the purpose of each and everything. Otherwise, you'll be just reading a lot of things, and at no point in time you'll be confident. So if you are confident enough, go and take the assessment. Simple. Or if you want to watch the video once again, watch it once again very carefully again, then attempt that assessment, and we'll send you a certificate of completion issued by the Project Management Research Institute. Help us to propagate this course to maximum people. So share it with anybody. It can be students, it can be experienced people, it can be engineers, project team members, team leads. So share it with everybody. Let everybody master Scrum and get an acknowledgement, a certificate for it, so that adds value to their competency, as well as it will improve their credential. This is absolutely free by Project Management Research Institute. Thank you very much.